March Rhode Island chapter. Lisa, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you here today. So in 2017, the Women's March on Washington captivated people around the globe with estimates of 5 million people worldwide joining to have their voices heard. And estimates around 7,000 people joined forces together in Rhode Island for the Rhode Island event. So this year, you are having an anniversary rally at the State House on Saturday, starting at noon. Talk to me a little bit about what the plans are for this year's event.
Sure. So as the anniversary approached, several organizers sort of got together and said, how do we want to mark this event? What do we want to use our platform for? How do we want to kind of keep the momentum going that we built in 2017. As you mentioned, we had huge turnouts globally and locally, in addition to the 7,000 who turned out here in Providence for the sister rally. There were thousands more of us represented in Washington, D.C. at the National March. So we really wanted to capitalize on that and continue what we've seen over this past year in terms of new and newly reinvigorated activists who really have been taking more of an interest in the local issues as well as the national issues that affect all of us as humans in this country. So we saw the anniversary event as an opportunity to kind of come back together, recharge, take a look back at what we've accomplished in 2017, and really take a look at what we need to be focusing on in 2018 to continue the great work that started.
I think those are all really important points that you've just made. So you mentioned that, so coming up this Saturday will kind of be like the anniversary. You told me that not all chapters, not all organizations are doing an anniversary event. Why did you feel like it was important to hold a one-year rally?
I think, as I mentioned, there was a lot of activity in 2017. I don't know that everyone who was involved in the initial rally or event in DC knows all of the ways in which Women's March continued to work throughout 2017. There weren't always formal rallies, there wasn't always formal branding, but from the Women's March beginnings, we saw just a massive influx of participants at the State House throughout the legislative session, writing petitions, contacting legislators, supporting other local social justice organizations and participating in things like the March for Racial Justice. So we really wanted to make sure that people knew that we hadn't gone away, and that if they were still interested or if they needed some more direction as to how do I keep doing this work, that we wanted to be able to provide that to them, because again, this was such a powerful and impactful movement and showing that we had, and we want to make sure that people don't lose steam and that we can kind of put all of our efforts together to make the biggest difference.
I definitely think that not losing steam and kind of gathering off the momentum of the past year, of the accomplishments that have been made by this organization and others kind of cohesively, it does make sense and make a difference. What do you hope the mood will be like on Saturday?
Determined. I hope that we are able to both sort of look at the successes we've had and feel good about that, and use that feeling of success to say, this is why we keep doing this work. We do have a lot left to do, and it is easy to get overwhelmed in the face of what seem to be daily attacks on our brothers and sisters in this country. And I think it's really, really important to come together and say, look at what we are able to accomplish when we put our minds to it, when we put our bodies out here, when we put our voices and our votes to it. So I think that this is really going to be an opportunity for folks to get charged up again and to walk away feeling like they know what to do next. Sometimes you have a big event, you have a big rally, and everybody feels great, and they go home and they're a little bit lost and on their own. And again, there's a lot of new activists out there who really don't know how to independently say, this is what I do with this information. So we really want people to walk away feeling re-energized, committed to the work, and knowing how to do the work. So we're going to have a lot of social justice organizations both speaking and represented in our at our table organization, so folks can sign right up. If there's a particular issue that they're committed to or passionate about, they can get registered and stay in touch with those folks and continue the work that they're doing throughout the year.
So it's kind of an opportunity so people can hear more, get reinvigorated if they're interested to do so, and to find those networking groups issues that are pertinent to them that they feel strongly about, get more information, and kind of move forward, which I think is a neat opportunity because, like you said, so much happens throughout the course of a year, and then sometimes you can have that, while you do feel strongly and you do want to become involved, sometimes things can break down. So just having that chance to become reinvigorated again. You talked a little bit about how you have speakers that are going to have certain messages. What I did find interesting, you've told me this before, and then I looked over the list of speakers, which you can find on their website, and we'll provide a link to. You made a decision to not have any political speakers. Can you talk to me a little bit about that decision?
Sure, happy to. Collectively, as a group of organizers, we talked about what we wanted to do with our speaking program this year. Again, after last year's success, there was a lot of interest in people who wanted to have their voices heard, but there were a couple of considerations. One is that if we allow one politician to speak, it opens the door to have every politician want to speak, and we just would not have time, especially that gambling on January weather, which we are really fortunate, it looks like, again this year, but that was a gamble. We didn't want to have a 4-hour speaking program in 27 degrees. But we also really wanted to use this opportunity to give a platform to people whose voices are not always heard. We hear from legislators all the time. We hear from politicians. Their voices are amplified everywhere. And we wanted to be able to amplify other voices from marginalized communities who normally would not have that kind of opportunity, and we would invite our legislators and politicians to come down and hear those voices and learn from those voices and hear what Rhode Islanders think needs to be happening at our local, state, and national level in order to ensure that human rights means all humans.
I think it's interesting too, making that a conscious decision, and also it's not a political issue. This isn't a political rally at all whatsoever. So, and politics right now can be very divisive.
Correct. This is just about human rights. If you believe in human rights, then you are welcome at our rally. If you're not sure what that means, you can check out the Women's March National page for the Unity Principles. That's really those are our guiding principles, and that is where we tried to draw our speakers from, so folks could address some of those issues, but again, address them in actionable ways for 2018. So we looked at who is got the expertise to speak to this type of issue, and what are we doing about it here in Rhode Island that you can get active in right away.
And I think that conscious decision does say a lot about the movement itself, and I do find that interesting. But you also mentioned that politicians are welcome to come and see what people are talking about and answer questions and provide input and walk around and that kind of thing too. So interesting to see what will come of it and who will be involved. I do remember this time last year that the rally and the march had to be postponed because the weather was like negative something degrees, right?
That was actually our International Women's Day rally.
Okay, that's what it was.
Follow-up, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Luckily, we got lucky both in DC and in Providence last year with the Women's March
rally. Right, wasn't it just brutally cold and had to reschedule, and it was just...
The International Women's Day March
was,
yes. We were very fortunate with the original Women's March in both areas.
That's right. So this year, this event looks to be great. It looks to be great weather.
We're looking out for 40s, partly cloudy, really nice day to come out. Absolutely. Get out of the house if you've been housebound because of cold and snow,
right.
And reconnect with folks who are also doing this work.
So let's talk a little bit about, I thought this might be, so you've been working on this for some time now. Talk to me a little bit about what you've been surprised being involved with this movement over the course of the past year.
I think the first surprise was how big this movement became and how quickly. We, as organizers, got into this thinking, we're going to plan this march and rally, and then we're going to go back to our lives. And that has not happened for any of us. The momentum just couldn't be ignored, and we wanted to make sure when we got back from DC and when we packed up the Providence event that we were able to continue what we had started there. There have, of course, been challenges in that because we, as I like to say, are building the airplane while we fly it. This was something that was going to be a one-off, and now we are an organization. And so we've had some learning curves, and we have really listened to criticisms of our events, our actions, our inclusivity, and really taken steps to say, hey, we hear you. We hear the most marginalized, we hear the most vulnerable, and if you don't feel welcome, please let us know how we can help. So to that end, we're really encouraging folks this year to wear Rosie the Riveter style bandanas, which are a little bit more inclusive to all women. We heard feedback that the pink hats, which were the mark of the Women's March last year, really made communities of color and trans women feel not included in that movement, and really kind of focused it on one particular aspect of human rights. So we're encouraging people to hear that kind of feedback and to say, okay, I can continue to grow, I can continue to be more intersectional, because feminism without intersectionality is not feminism. So I think we've all had our learning curves there and stepped in it as new activists, new organizers, a new organization. But I think as a group, we have been willing to do that growth and been willing to say, we hear you and here's what we're going to do about it.
And that's interesting because I kind of wanted to follow that up. What did you learn, and will there be any new changes? So I think that's fascinating because, yes, while it is a women's march, it is inclusive to the fact that people who identify as female are being included, but we also saw many other supporters from many different communities coming together. I mean, 5 billion people worldwide were involved overall in this mission, 7,000 people, like you mentioned, involved in Rhode Island. So working to support, you said, human rights.
Yeah, absolutely. And we mean all humans. So we want to make sure that all humans feel comfortable, feel safe, and feel like we are able to represent them, and that they can be a part of this movement, because we really are all in this together, and we can't do it without one another, and we can't work for one niche area of feminism and continue to exclude all of the other ways in which it intersects with different identities.
So you mentioned that there will be, and like I said, many different topics addressed within the march and your speaker series. There'll be many different areas addressed as well. Are there key points or key things that you'll be working for come 2018, things that women can kind of jump in, platforms that need to be addressed in Rhode Island in 2018?
Absolutely. You're going to hear from some of our huddles, which were subgroups that sort of, when we came back from DC, we sort of regionalized and tried to do further community outreach and do more local action. So we're going to hear about some of the things that they've done and what they're planning for next year. We are going to have the Secretary of State's office on site to do voter registration. We believe that re-enfranchising or first-time enfranchisement of voters is critical to ensuring human rights for everybody. So we're going to try to make that as easy as possible for people. We're going to hear about some legislative efforts that are coming up in the General Assembly, including the Reproductive Health Care Act. And we're also going to be talking about how to create space and really help women of color, trans women, folks who are not normally given the opportunities to advance in things like education, legislation, business ownership. There's really going to be a lot of effort to educate and help folks gain power. I mean, that's really what this is. We need more women in power. We need more progressive women in power if we're really going to see the Women's March movement continue.
Well, I hope you'll keep us in the loop, keep us updated.
Sure, absolutely.
Let us know how things pan out. And if you're interested, of course, we will put information on our website. But the event is this Saturday, the 20th, at the State House. Everything kicks off at noon, correct?
Correct.
So head on over if you're interested. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us
Thanks
today.
for having me.
I appreciate you coming over, and of course, keep us in the loop on everything that is occurring. Please hang tight here on GoLocal Live as we get set up here for our next guest.